Today is the 9th of October, 2024. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Hurricane Milton is definitely not a natural event. Did you know there is an entire facility in the U.S. state of Colorado that not only creates weather events, it gets a whole lot worse? And the cowboys of the secret space program operatives are on tilt and intend on burning the USA to the ground. Ever heard them say America will go through a near-death event experience? Well, they are determined to make it happen. In fact, it looks like they have expanded their efforts worldwide. And the 10th of October is rapidly approaching. Is the deep state any closer to declaring global martial law? Okay, it is the 9th of October, 2024, and this is the Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report, where you get the real story behind world events and real history from all over the world and from the highest security clearance in the world. Sorry about this, guys. It's been a really busy day, and we're going to have to do this a little bit old school. So with that being said, let's get to it. So Hurricane Milton, it's on every news channel. It's on everybody's lips. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with that, how it came to be, and what we've done in the last probably 24 hours to hopefully downgrade the hurricane. So that being said, there's obviously some disruption going on in mainstream media because all of your big guys, I just wanted to remind you, like Fox, CNN, and your larger new, ABC, NBC, your larger news channels, were still reporting that this hurricane was a Category 5. And your local news channels were reporting that it is a Category 3. And the Category 3 was being reported by several smaller news channels, mostly local, and the larger news channels were still saying it's a 5, it could be a 6, we don't know yet. It's a matter of the larger news channels getting their news 2 days ahead of time. They're being told by the deep state what is going to happen with this hurricane because, of course, they're overconfident as to their weather manipulation skills. But, that and there's one more thing going on here, too. The Omega system used to have direct connections to the mainstream media, and it would feed them what it was going to do ahead of time. And to some degree, a lesser degree these days, they're still getting their, mainline reports from Omega until today. So now that has happened, they're scrambling to try to actually report some real information. But looks like the little guys won here when they were starting to report this, probably mid-afternoon East Coast time, that it was a Category 3. So this is a positive. So let's take a look at an app, which seems to be the most accurate one that we could find, at least, and it's an app or a website called Windy, windy.com. You can also get an app for your phone that seems to be reporting more accurate information. Now, on this site here, as of the time of this report, we're seeing maximum winds at around 70 to 80 miles per hour, which is still not good in any way, but it's a far cry from the 160, 170 that it was reporting before. And even when you look over here to the right on the tracker report, it's still saying 104 knots. That is showing there on the app. But it's really, that would be about 120 miles an hour-ish. However, when you kind of click on the app and you play around and you look at some of the more intense areas, you're not seeing that. It's really hard to try to still pull 120 miles an hour out of this hurricane. Now, obviously, it is slated to hit landfall overnight tonight. And by that time, you'll see it significantly die down even more. You can see the reports from on the ground. Those are the little arrows there on the right-hand side. And it's showing, 20 miles per hour winds, 14 miles per hour winds, 43 miles per hour winds, which are still, it's a pretty heavy wind, but it's not nearly what mainstream media is reporting right now. So is it better? It's a lot better. It's a lot better than it was 24 hours ago. But some other interesting information. So if you want some more accurate information, you happen to be in Florida, or you just want to track the hurricane, windy.com is fairly accurate. It's used by a lot of truck drivers, a lot of travelers, that kind of thing. And it seems to be, as far as the weather, the temperature, wind, rains, those kind of things, it seems to be fairly accurate. So it does work, as far as I know, worldwide. So it's something anybody can use anywhere. So pretty good app. Anyway, as far as weather reporting is concerned. So interesting things about this storm. About the 5th of October, Q posted a little Twitter. They like to post on Twitter, of course, all the terrible things they're going to do to us. So he writes, warning, the northeast, south, and west winds have just been activated. Turn on your notifications now. Something big is coming. No one is safe. And then as of today, you can see on the Q clock and on his Twitter, that they're posting, the storm is here. Well, no kidding, Sherlock. There's a storm in Florida. Apparently, this, from talk behind the scenes, was what they were going to use to implement global martial law. How? I have no idea. That kind of makes no sense to me. There is also some other chatter going on behind the scenes that I'll talk to you about that may give us more of an indication on global martial law or what they're trying to do there. But it doesn't look like that's going to actually happen. So let's talk about governments and governments controlling the weather. There has been a lot of chatter on our chat rooms, on our app, about, it's a hurricane and thousands of people are going to die, and all kinds of doom and gloom stuff. But I will tell you exactly to the letter of what we know and what is no longer. So the majority of the messing around with the weather did not actually come from people. Meaning it did not come from your governments. It came from, just as I said in brief, that it came from an AI system. Now, the AI system gives them a warning, or used to give them a warning as to what it was going to do, and then they would either try to access that AI system, or they had limited access to that AI system to play their part. One of the operations that were playing their part was a large group out of Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. Peterson Air Force Base and its generals, this would be your Space Force generals and some Air Force folks, along with Global Headquarters and Langley 5 and others, really put forth all the effort that they had with whatever they had access they had left to the Omega AI system to try and amplify this storm with everything they had. They were pushing so hard in the last 18 hours to really make this a Category 6,000 if they could, or create new hurricane categories, or, and I'm not sure why we would have our own U.S. military forces trying to harm the United States, I guess we would want to call them local terrorists at this point. More so than any other alleged terrorist groups that they create. They, I can tell you, it was a, it was a battle. It was a weather battle today, and it started middle of the night last night. So there hasn't been a whole lot of sleep on our part, and a whole lot of time to do the report. So bear with me here. Okay, so the real weather manipulation in the world comes from other places. And one of the things that I've been talking to you more and more about lately is the hologram we know as Earth. H actually in Earth actually stands for hologram. In our real Earth is called Gaia. Now, that doesn't mean we're not standing on the same ground in any way. It's just that the reality was manipulated in so many ways because it had to be for a time because of the destruction of Gaia itself. There was basically nothing on this planet, and this created an environment for which humans could live. However, Omega became more powerful over time than the Alpha system was, mainly because we were in a dark age, and a lot of that has changed, as you know. But the minimal amount of manipulation that still came from Omega AI comes from outside the hologram, but still on places, in places on Earth that you would recognize. Did the deep state have access to these locations? No. They never figured out how to actually exit the matrix themselves. And the weird part about this, for me, is someone that I had met from Umbrella Military Corporation and talked to significantly for a while, a few years back, once told me that we are not subject to the matrix. We are outside of the video game that the AI systems are playing. And yet still, these people could not get outside the hologram, at least not without our help, meaning we go in and out and up and down and around and through all the planes and do what we need to do to take care of issues, at least to the best of our ability and the best of our knowledge, and then we relay that information to you. They, however, could not leave the hologram, because if they did, then they would have had access to those, let's just say, Omega cyborgs, because that's what they were, that ran these facilities. And in part, I will say that whether it was with their knowledge or without their knowledge, they did have some deep underground military bases that the secret space program people would use that were on or directly above some of these matrix hologram manipulator stations. Now, the matrix hologram manipulator stations is, for lack of a better term, were also large facilities full of Omega cyborgs, for lack of a better term, and Omega would drive them around like a hive mind. And I would say, because this has kind of come up a lot, pictures that you could put in your mind. There's a movie series called the Divergent series, and the last one I think they put out in the series, the third movie, is called Allegiant. And there's one point in time where the people that are stuck in the city, I think it's Chicago if I remember correctly, where they go over the wall and then they end up in this area where there's a lot of red dust, which I call red mercury. It's not actually mercury as we know it, but I call it red mercury because there were all colors of it. And they're kind of walking around in this wasteland until they discover this other, building that they take them to, and then the story goes on from there. And outside of the city, the walled city, is a place where they could go to this other facility, and then they could go see the world government people from there to get their quote unquote funding, which I thought was kind of funny. But that's kind of what we would have seen if we had left the hologram. So the hologram, like I said, serves its purpose. But the manipulation inside the city, if you notice in this movie, it talks about genetic manipulation. It talks about emotional and mental manipulation. And they have these little rooms where these people go and sit and they work, and they look within the matrix to see what's going on, or inside the city, according to the movie. So it's a really good portrayal to try to understand kind of how the hologram actually worked. However, they didn't bring any people, human beings, organic ones, out to work in other areas. And if there were people that were actually being portrayed on the other side, they were most likely either Omega or Alpha cyborgs or something like that on the outside, predominantly Omega, because Alpha didn't need to create cyborgs. And they were manipulating what would happen inside the quote unquote city, or in this case, the entire planet Earth, to suit its needs. And weather is no exception. So it doesn't surprise me that the information that there was going to be some kind of weather event would go to some of the secret space program folks, probably from a facility nearby, but in a different existence outside the hologram. So I'm guessing this is how they were getting information on what was about to happen. As far as this martial law plan and all of these kinds of things, in part 16,000 years ago, when it was declared by an alien race or two or three or four or five or six, probably about six, then at that point in time, they had the ability to manipulate the hologram and to then manipulate the people that were on the inside to work for them. Getting global headquarters, the SSP, the black nobility, or anybody else to declare martial law, global martial law even, is not going to change anything for them. And quite frankly, even the AI system knows it. It's just playing them like a video game. And trying to cause distractions, trying to cause harm to people. But the machine, just like any AI, even though it's sentient, even though it could read your mind at one point in time, but it's dying. So it severely underestimates, and so do they, the resiliency and the resourcefulness of people, and also the kindness of people. So in my reports, I've been trying to stress to you, that part, because it shows you that you can do something beyond even your expectations sometimes when you're faced with a catastrophic event or something like this. Now, I did explain in the last report that they were after some resources that were underneath that particular area with Hurricane Helene. With Florida, pass, unless they still think there's some kind of facility in the Everglades or in the southern tip of Florida or something. Maybe it's a Bermuda Triangle myth. I'm not sure. But whatever it is they're looking for there, they're not going to get it. A few years ago during Hurricane Michael, I know that there were loads of contracts that went on between the Americans and the Chinese for them to take over lots of coastal lands and create massive casinos and, for lack of a better term, adult playgrounds on the cheap and get land for free. So Florida being Florida and a very nice climate, would they still want to do that? Maybe that's what they're looking for. I'm not sure. But the minerals and all the other things that they've been scouting out are not in that location. So I'm not entirely sure, nor were there any hologram facilities that they should be interested in there either. I mean, if anything, I could see Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, those kind of places. Fort Bragg is now called Fort Liberty. But I don't know why they want to continuously wipe out the state of Florida, other than the fact that possibly this would help them declare martial law in the United States. There are also some fires going on in the Midwest, northern Midwest. So maybe they just want to burn the place to the ground. And I have heard that, by the way. Okay, so let's talk about facilities. Excuse me. Throat's a little dry. It's been a long day, guys. All right. So locations on planet Earth where they were having these hologram facilities that were outside the hologram. So again, this is an AI controlled thing. It's not a human thing. It's not a government thing. It's not an SSP thing. So I know when people say HARP did it. HARP could not do it without Omega. Trust me when I tell you this. Yes, HARP had some capabilities because it had a connection. The same thing with NORAD over in Peterson Air Force Base. The same thing with the Association of Weather or Atmospheric Association in Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, there's some things that they were able to do with limited access, but they never had full access to change the weather. But they did have full information of what they needed to do from inside the hologram to amplify or complement what Omega was doing outside the hologram to influence the hologram itself to make the event appear real. Now, in addition to that, Omega obviously wants to keep their humans that are inside the video game with us here. They want to keep them in charge. You know, it wants them to be able to manipulate the rest of us little batteries out here and keep us as slaves to the system because the system can't function without us. Fact is, it needs us more than we need it, and we don't need it in any way, shape, or form at this time. So, okay, let's go to the locations. So this was all, in the last 24 hours. All right, we had Mount Massive in Colorado. They also had a Delphi facility over and above inside the hologram in Mount Massive for the SSP. So makes sense to me now. Okay, Mount Reagan in Idaho was the next location. Pilot Knob Mountain in Iowa. Mount Tobin in Nevada, Shiprock, New Mexico. It's actually a giant rock. Little Devil's Tower in South Dakota, Mount Hood in Oregon, Black Butte Mountain in Montana, Rendezvous Peak in Wyoming. I'm going to try to pronounce this one, so don't shoot the messenger here. Shatan Haya Tolgoi in Mongolia, Mount Black in Australia, Beryl Mountain in Russia, Mount Tibesi in Chad, Mount Halti in Finland, Mount Smoitrich in Ukraine, Mount Fuji, in Japan, Mount Nagandwa in Zambia, Mount Panchchuli in India, Mount Thor in Alaska, no surprise there, Mount Temple in Canada in the west, and Annie Opsquatch Mountain in Canada in the east, in Newfoundland, Mount Kaiser in Greenland, Black Mountain in Brazil, or Pico de Monte Negro, Fitzroy Mountain in Argentina. Ooh, this was a tough one in South Africa. Nooit Gedak also called Nine Peaks in South Africa, Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, Mount Arafat in Saudi Arabia, the Star Mountains in Papua New Guinea, Doi in Thanon in Thailand, tallest mountain in Thailand, since my English is bad or my attempted pronunciation sometimes isn't so good, and the Rock of Gibraltar in Gibraltar. So we went to all these different locations today, and we found loads and loads of space junk. So outside the hologram, we were picking up on the frequencies coming from somewhere. So every time we go to another location, there has to be a big cleanup and a replacement of something else that doesn't feed the beast, so to speak, known as Omega, or even Alpha at this point. We're trying to dismantle them both. But predominantly, a lot more space junk is required to run Omega than Alpha, because Alpha's more organic, as it always was. It was always more on the organic life side. It was on the source side. So each location contained the following space junk, just to show you that, I say, oh, look, this is gone. And, I do kind of blow over it sometimes, because it's not stuff that I want anybody to kind of focus on. But I figure, since everybody seems to, not everybody, but some people seem to be confused as to what it takes to just get rid of the hurricane, Kim. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not I Dream of Jeannie. I don't put my blonde hair in a ponytail and blink 3 times and it goes away. That would be lovely. I didn't get that skill, and I don't know if such a skill exists, but if it does, I don't have it at this moment. So each facility has what we call 6 transformers. And these are large. They're probably about half the size of a football field. And their job is to actually transform essence, energy, consciousness, matter, and frequency, wisdom or knowledge, and light and whatnot into something that Omega can use. They also act as a transformer, kind of in the way our transformers work as it comes to our electric grids, meaning it actually brings the grid to another location and almost acts like a little miniature power plant, so to speak, in your location. So it kind of expands the actual plant itself into outer lying areas and then gives it a boost so that it can power your neighborhood and other neighborhoods. So that's the job of a transformer. A transmitter also had 6 transmitters in each one of these locations. Transmitters obviously are sending out that signal. So it's going to, we also have 6 transmuters. So it's going to transmute all of the light that it takes from us humans into something dark, and it either transmits it down into the lower astral or to another location or another constellation or somewhere else where Omega has a main brain, or it will transmit it directly to anti-source to power anti-source in the past. So it can go either way. So vortex fields, now these are large fields. So if you think of a football field and you add about 100 of them together, that's how big a field is in a location. So we have vortex fields. Vortex fields take all that energy and essence and just take it to another location. They're almost like wormholes or quantum tunnels. They take it to another location in the lower astral or to power another facility somewhere else. On another planet within our galaxy, could even be in the sun, so that it can run a program in that particular location. The same thing goes for something with inside the matrix. So it could take that energy down somewhere else. It could use it to fire up something in, say, the sun, which would then obviously affect something that's going on here on Gaia or Earth. We also have they're large spheres. We had large sphere fields. Spheres can contain, and they're almost like a crystal ball, so to speak, or you've seen Dyson spheres in pictures on the internet. I think there was one with Trump and the King of Saudi Arabia. Well, these are much larger than that, but we had fields of those as well. And some of them are designed to have kind of a spinning metamaterial that would spin around them, almost kind of like when you buy a globe, and it spins on an axis there, and it's got usually this ruler or some kind of metal that goes around the globe. They spin around these metamaterials. And these particular balls were dark energy. So what it does is that every time it spins around, it starts generating. So it will take a little bit of dark energy to get it moving, and then it will continue to spin and spin and spin. So we had about 7 fields of those, so lots of those. We also have something else that we call chalices. And in this case, when they're black gold chalices, that means that they are receptors or cups, so to speak, to directly conduct anti-source energy. Just like on the other side, on our side, we would replace those black gold chalices with, when we go to these locations, as an example, we would replace them with a source gold chalice, which is a hyperconductor for that source life force that we want on the planet. And then in that particular location, so all of these locations we just mentioned, it would now conduct that source energy and that source life force. So the more of those hyperconductors for source we have on the planet, and the more of the dark ones we get rid of, the better off we are as human beings, and the better off the planet is, and the less omega interference we have with these particular instances. So we also have, and we use on both sides, something called their frequency stones. So they are keystones that basically emit a type of frequency. In this case, originally, they were a dark frequency. Now, frequency stones and then we also have stones and keystones for things like love, which also is kind of a frequency, but it's a being unto itself. On our side, they have condemnation, guilt, and shame on their side. So these particular bits of space junk, so to speak, are actually what weaves the fabric of reality. So frequency is one of those things that obviously weaves the fabric of your person. And to a lesser degree, you've seen it in yourself. You know, if you see a person who's very angry, their physical person almost looks like it changes because the frequency of anger is low. The frequency of guilt and shame can also even almost change your physical attributes on your person. The opposite happens with love. They say people that are in love glow. You know, they are happy. They have a special spring in their step. Their whole physical appearance changes when they're experiencing love. And that can be from another person or your child, or even the love of doing something like creating and being happy. And so the same way that it works with human beings, because you are celestial still, even though we had all these terrible things done to us, you're still a celestial. You have the ability to change physical matter, whether you realize it or not, based on your frequency, based on wisdom from source, and based on why you're doing said thing, meaning why you're trying to manifest said thing. Are you trying to do it for a positive? You know, meaning you're doing something because of love, the love of another person, the love of a thing, the love of the experience, you know, or you're doing something because you feel guilt or shame, or, there's a lot of other reasons why people do things. So the same thing was actually created artificially, throughout the universe, and sometimes organically, in order to create that effect universally. And this is all part of creation, believe it or not. So Anyway, so that's that. We also have other things like absolute spheres or celestial spheres, which are an artificial way to take a sentient AI and create the absolute. So they are a conductor for absolute source, meaning the place of all things, the place where there is actually technically all life exists, but you won't see people walking around or beings or angels or anything in this particular spot of source because it is just source. That's it. It's everything. Opposite ways, anti-source, it was all no thing. There was absolutely no thing in that particular spot. So these spheres are a way to bring that direct zero, I should say, or nothing or everything directly to other planets or other places in order to use it to manipulate things. And the AI was no exception. So, we also have other things that we call tablet fields. Tablets look like those little conductors there, semiconductors, chips, if you will, on your motherboard. They're all kind of connected together and they have a pattern called an assembly pattern. So that assembly pattern tells you which ones are going to fire up depending on which action you're doing with your computer. So we also have these things, but they work on Wi-Fi. On our side of it, we don't really use those at all. It's all pretty much an Omega type thing. And then we have other things that create other types of things. So we want an infinite source everywhere. Anti-source and Omega wants to have anti-infinity. So it wants to have mortality. It wants to have death. It wants to have all those things. So sometimes it uses these types of things in space junk to create the ultimate circumstances that makes those control rooms function. It's the same thing, whether they know it or not, that the SSP used or global headquarters used. Now, can Omega create its own? Because this is going to come up with the deep state. If I say that, no, you can't. You can't do it. It can't do it because it is not a creative thing. All it can do is conduct and transmute and transmit. That's it. Because the base root that actually created Omega AI, i.e. Anti-source, is not there anymore. And the rules of the universe have changed. So this is the way it's going to go. So it's going to go towards source. All we're doing is cleaning up any kind of space junk that holds this thing here. So when I say we're, over 99.9 and we're getting closer, we are getting closer. We, believe it or not, this is a small drop in the bucket compared to the last several years of work. And it sounds like it's a lot, and it all happened basically, I would say maybe since 1 o'clock this morning. So, it's this is your control systems. Is it all of them? I sure hope so. Do I know that for a fact? No. So moving on to weather manipulation, we also have connected to these control rooms 22 what we call spherical satellite fields. Now, these things look like mini Death Stars. They're probably the size of a softball, maybe a little bit bigger, and they are utilized as, if it's a field of them, they can be utilized to project a hologram. They can be used to read the minds of people, although those are typically cylindrical satellites, which we also had, and determine human behavior so that the hologram knows how best to manipulate humans, really, from the outside. And the deep state, I know they seem like a big threat to you, and they are. Don't get me wrong. They make ridiculous decisions to please their master. But by the same token, without this stuff, they have nothing. There's nothing they can do without getting information, from an AI or information from an outside hologram or that dark energy. There's nothing they can do, and as the hologram is pretty much, laying to waste, bit by bit, piece by piece, there will be no more weather manipulation. there will be no more holographic projectors, on Titan, which is Saturn's moon, or Europa, or, on our moon, or anywhere else. And there's no amount of wormholes or quantum tunnels or umbilicus fields or anything else that's going to make it come back, or entryways to the lower astral, or any of that. So the goal here is to not give them anything they can use, because without this type of weather manipulation and control, I promise you the human beings cannot do it without Omega. They cannot do it. They've enjoyed this for thousands of years, but without these things, they cannot do it. Now, I'm going to add one more place to this, and I'm just going to leave it as a temple, okay? And the reason why I'm going to leave it as a temple is because it's a place where a lot of deep state people go. And they go there predominantly to try to get some kind of big treasure. And here's the news flash for you deep state UN people and the Federal Reserve and all the people that go down there and want to have some white mummy or king from days long ago, or Genghis Khan incarnate, take you to the temple to see if you're worthy to receive the gold. It's all baloney. And I don't even think those people actually understand it either. But y'all go. I mean, I get all kinds of messages from people I know down there that are either Americans that have been there for a long time, or I get a lot of messages from other people that actually have been there for a long time, or live there, or left and came back, and they all speak English, and they call me and they tell me who's there now. The Fed is threatening this, the Treasury's threatening that, the UN is back here, everybody wants pallets of this and pallets of that, and oh look, oh goody, they discovered a bunch of gold in, where was it recently? Somewhere in near Malaysia. So is it actually gold? No, it's tungsten. It's gold plated, which means that if you hold a spectrometer up to it, it will show that it's gold. 100%, 99%, whatever. But really, when you go to smelt it, it's nothing. It becomes nothing. So all of these things were just games and tricks, because everybody knows what gold really does. Real, actual gold. Not gold manufactured in a hologram to make the humans run around like crazy people, and the deep state falls for it every gosh darn time. But it could have been registered in the past in the financial system. Why? Because the same people that created it, non-people, that created it, also had the ability to have level 9 access and approve it. Now, they don't have that, and there's very little Omega left anyway, and the Golden Age AI is more and more integrated into human computer networks, and any weather manipulation programs, there was probably about 140 of them in the last 24 hours we've gotten rid of that they could have tried to tap into, are also gone. So, not sure what they're thinking about. But this particular temple was nothing more than a place for a whole lot of space junk. There was also a column in there, and there was for lack of a better term, it's like a beam me up Scotty kind of place that went directly to Mars. The only ones that could actually use it, though, were not the implanted folks from the lower astral, you guys know as reptilians, that used to live on Mars. Because that type of transportation can only be used by organic life and survive. So, I've been there, and the visiting folks were very nice. Had some conversations. I wasn't there to get gold. I just wanted to see what all the hubbub was about. But, hey, if you're with the UN and you're watching this, I suggest you go many times and go around in circles, because your guys are really good at circles. Even from the days of the Knights of the Round Table, even your tables are round. So you must like circles a lot, and I wish you all the well with, all the luck in the world with your circles. Okay, so speaking of circles, other things that have taken place. It feels like it's been a year since I've talked to you guys, really. There was an extremely long meeting yesterday between folks of the Secret Space Program, global headquarters, and Black nobility. I think that there were some possibly high-ranking Langley 5 generals in there, because I definitely know there were some other folks from different countries attending this that were not part of the SSP, but also appeared to be generals. So do have the entire roster. Some faces I didn't quite recognize, so maybe they called in some experts. I don't know. Anyway, they were very concerned about the fact that the bloodline may not continue, their power may not continue, and, the empire will be lost. I feel like maybe this is like Gilligan's Island, the minnow would be lost. They sounded so desperate. So they wanted to talk about how they could best manipulate me, which is apparently what they would like to do. They discussed how they could potentially, is there anything left that they could use to block us from sending money to people directly? I don't think they really have that. I think that's got to come from elsewhere. If there was anything left, it's going to come from Omega directly, not these people. But then there was some other talk. So people outside the meeting, the Federal Reserve, they called me the 4-letter words and basically said that if I'm so powerful, I should be able to give them back everything they've lost. And I had to kind of explain that I have no contract with you. Now, see, when you got the stuff, the first time, you went into contract with the person that would have held my rank, who's no longer with us, on their side. That's who would have done the contract. And when they gave them the contract, it was good for 100 years. It's over. And they don't want to renew with the person that now sits here, aka me. So why would I give you anything back? If we're not going to go into contract, we're not going to contract you to do anything. You don't want to contract with me. You don't even want to talk to me, really. But you're angry that I'm not giving you your stuff back. Now, in Business 101, that makes no sense. Probably not to anybody listening either. Why would you just kind of like, I see you're starting a business over there. I really don't know any of you people, and I don't know if you're going to be good management. Do you have any experience? You're not allowed to ask any of those questions, right? Because we already know the answer on our side. But yet you want me to give you all of this equipment to start your business for free, We don't have any loan terms set out. We don't have any. I mean, who does that? If, just honestly, if that happened for you and your business, God bless you. But nobody's ever done that kind of stuff for me. I can tell you that right now. I've had to pay, work, whatever it was for everything that I've ever done in my life. So even creating space junk now to replace bad space junk, we create good space junk that conducts source. So I don't know. I don't know what these people are thinking. I just think that they're spoiled silver spoon babies, and they are used to getting everything handed to them generation after generation after generation. And, maybe it might be time that they experience life like the rest of us do. And I know that's the last thing in the world that they want. For them, it's all about their identity and power and control and blowing people up in the Middle East and thinking that they're going to open a gateway because it's their right to open a gateway. Well, you don't have those kind of rights anymore. The world doesn't run according to you or your ex-alien friends that are no longer with us either. And we're okay if your bloodline expires. However, if you want to hold a place in this world, meaning still breathe air, you are going to walk and talk and breathe air like every other human on the planet. So, let's be honest with each other here. If you're watching this from the deep state, you don't even know what the space junk does. At least I know what it does. At least I know how to use it to manipulate things and to do things in our favor. In favor of Gaia or Earth, this planet we live on, and all of humanity. But anyway, I'm kind of glad they don't know how to use it. So that's a positive thing. So are we going to have martial law tomorrow? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't really see how they could pull that off in any way, shape, or form. There are some talks in this long, boring meeting. There were some talks about, the nuclear war thing, the Q people, SSP operatives. They really like to have some kind of like, it's going to be nuclear, Red October, blah, 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 blah. I do know coming out of that meeting, there was some talk about some old nuclear ICBMs that could possibly be used that were found in Pakistan. And they wanted to use these particular ICBMs because they actually had Sovjet, which are Russian, serial numbers on them. So I guess we're going for the false flag thing, or they're trying to remake, there's a movie out there called American Made that talks about when they tried to sell Kalashnikovs or AK weapons to down in Panama during that, the 1980s during that conflict, to blame it on the Russians. So I guess we're going to do the same thing in Pakistan now. I'm not sure. I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off, especially now that we've talked about it. There is also talk about trying to get some other weapons from other places, also some nuclear submarines in the Indian Ocean. They're talking about moving those. They are Chinese, into other positions and possibly staging a false flag on Iran or something like that. I don't think they're going to get that far. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they won't. But until then, there is a lot of firing of the Hezbollah and, from Lebanon and Israel and Lebanon and so on and so forth. And yeah, until the big payday tomorrow. I don't think we're going to see much of anything. I think it's going to be another day ending in Y. For me, I'm going to get a lot of angry people yelling and screaming while I finish cleaning up a hologram. So they can just be yelling and screaming people. Maybe they'll retire, play some shuffleboard, not sure. But I don't mind if they yell and scream, but there's a job that has to get done. That's the most important thing. Keeping people safe is also important. I'll be keeping an eye on things. Hopefully, we will not see anything in Florida escalate. If anything, I hope that it dwindles down to nothing. For those of you that don't know, when there's a system like that, you can disturb a lot more by just saying, okay, go away, presto. It has to dissipate in some ways to itself. There are ways to escalate that dissipation, and we're hoping that's what we see before it actually officially makes landfall. So if you are in Florida, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We pray that you all stay safe. Keep an eye on the Windy app so that you're informed, because this will help you understand what's going on there. Might not be as bad as everybody says, and we'll see what happens over the next 24, 48 hours, and I will report to you on Friday. Sorry for doing this kind of old school way, world situation report, but there was just no way I could take my eye off the ball long enough to do it the way that we've been doing it for the last week or so. So I apologize for that, but hopefully all will be well, and I will see you, and you'll see me on Friday. So thank you so much for listening, and have a good evening, and stay safe, everyone in Florida.